So today we're going to talk about 10 reasons why the American dream has moved to Poland. So what is the American dream? For me, it's not about owning a bunch of cars and having a lot of money. It's about freedom, independence, rule of law, being able to work hard and accomplish anything that you want. That used to be normal, but now it seems that America is becoming a place of haves and have-nots, not to mention all the infighting and the divisiveness that we have within the country, like with what's going on in Minnesota right now is absolutely crazy with ICE. We have shared core values around freedom and independence. Independence matters a lot more than comfort. American culture pushes kids to go out there, go to college, get a job, move out of the house very quickly. And in a lot of ways, Poland does seem to encourage that, even though here they encourage it a lot more with the women than they do with the men. And both countries understand that freedom needs to be protected. Out of all of the countries in the European Union, Poland is one of the only ones that has met the requirement for minimum GDP needed to spend on the military. Because Poland is right next to Ukraine, they understand the importance of investing in your own defense. And very similar to America, yes, the military complex may be a little ridiculous at times, but the fact that our military is so strong is a reason why America has so much power around the world. Independence and freedom needs to be protected and you need to fight for it. I think this is the American spirit, but specifically the Polish spirit. It's a country that values freedom because they know what it's like to live without it. Because they've been invaded so many times, their country wiped off the map. So out of all the countries in Europe, I think Poland was the one that refused the jab the most during COVID because they just have this natural doubt and ability to think for themselves. One of the defining things of a country is having borders and enforcing immigration. Here in Poland, illegal immigration is not a matter of left and right. It's about breaking the law. And if somebody breaks the law, then they should go to jail or they should be deported. But now in America, this has become a partisan issue. But it didn't always used to be like this. Here's a picture of the ICE chief getting the Medal of Honor for a record amount of deportees in a year. You would say that guy's a bad person, but joke's on you, he actually got it awarded this by Barack Obama. Obama actually deported a lot more illegal immigrants than Trump has. And people now are demonizing ICE. People are saying that Trump is a Nazi, but Obama was doing the exact same thing. If you want to immigrate into the country, you have to do it the legal way. This is like one of the fundamental parts of having a country. I understand that people come from bad situations, but that does not give you the right to break another country's laws and enter their country illegally. This seems like common sense to me. And you know that this was planned. As soon as Trump got into office the second time, the border immediately closed down and now we have a record low amount of people immigrating into the country. That's why I like the Polish mentality a lot, because yes, they have compassion, but it doesn't overrun the requirement for following the rules and the law. Something I like here in Poland is this mindset of standing up for yourself and not letting anybody push you around. America used to be like that when men were still men and men were treated with respect. However, now I feel like America has evolved into a lot of cowardice. For some reason, the narrative has changed from being the victor of your story to be the victim of your story. Everybody wants to be a victim, and people think that being a victim gives you privilege or higher status, and they use that as an argument to justify their stuff, right? To me, that's absolutely stupid. Or I want to hear the opinion of somebody who went through hardship, overcame it, and doesn't let that hardship define them. I want to hear from winners. I don't want to hear from perpetual losers. And this victim mentality is pervasive in America. Here in Poland, though, people just don't put up with BS. They are honest, they are direct, and they encourage you to stand up for yourself in a good way. Here in Poland, parents raise their kids with this idea of tough love. They're strict but loving, and communication usually is quite important. In America, I think the parents want to be your friends. There used to be a respect for elders, a respect for authority to a certain extent. Now, maybe it's the social media generation. You have all these college students talking down to university professors, to deans, to anybody in authority. I remember when I was in uni, the woke mindset infected so many universities. People were afraid of saying the truth because they didn't want to lose their job, they didn't want to be canceled, they didn't want to be seen as offensive or racist. Here in Poland, people like to complain a lot. It's not complaining like, oh, my life sucks, woe is me. It's more like, this could be better, how can we improve it? If that makes sense. I think the people here don't really expect things to be handed to them. There is a mentality of if you want something, you gotta earn it. You don't let other people push you around. America is unique because it is an immigrant family-based society. But because not a lot of people in America have any real connection to their homeland, you don't feel the same responsibility and duty to carry on the legacy of your country, if that makes sense. Because Poland has had such a tumultuous history, and the people here were born here, their families were born here, their ancestors fought for them to be here, there is a different level of respect and honor to your family and to your bloodline and to your legacy. And this honor and duty is very difficult to fake. It's something that I'm jealous of because it's something I would never be able to feel as a child of an immigrant family. And that's why I encourage Polish people that live in other countries, so in Western Europe or America or Canada, to come back to the country. Something that always brings me to tears is the idea of doing something so great that my father's name gets remembered. I don't know why, but as a man, that always hits me so deep emotionally. The strongest motivation for a man to be great. And I can think of no better way to honor your country and your ancestors by coming back to your country, having kids, carrying on that legacy, and carrying on that duty to your country and to your family. We just don't have that in America because what does it mean to be American? I'm American, a white guy can be American, and a black guy can be American, but we all have different experiences, different histories, different ways that the country also treats us. Maybe as an Asian person, right? Because for us, dishonoring the family and duty to family is like the highest importance. But I just don't like living in an individualistic culture because, unfortunately, when everybody's an individualist, nobody values community. Everybody's in it for themselves. And when you're in a society that is more community-oriented, like Europeans or a lot of Asian countries, maybe you'll sacrifice some individualistic tendencies, but what you get in return, in my opinion, is a lot greater. Americans work extremely hard and we're very proud of it. And that's because we are taught from a young age that if you work hard and you put your mind to it, you can be whatever you want. Polish people in the US and in the UK get a reputation for working extremely hard. And this is something that I can respect as an American, right? I don't like lazy people. I think that's way more common in Western European countries because a lot of Western Europeans are getting complacent now. But here in Poland, getting a job, providing for your family, these are all heavily respected things. I like being in an environment where hard work is valued and appreciated. People don't understand what it takes to get freedom. You need to have a balance of stability and freedom. If you're too free, it's chaos. If you're too orderly, it's too restrictive, right? You need to find a good balance in the middle. In order to have the freedoms that you want, you have to have a base rule of law. This is something that is very respected here in Poland. People here follow the rules. As long as you follow the rules, you don't cause any trouble, people will leave you alone. In America, it feels like there's this two parallel worlds going on, where there's one side that wants to enforce law and order, sometimes a little bit to the extreme. But then you have the other side that doesn't value law and order at all and wants to completely abolish the police, or are constantly harassing ICE agents who are trying to do their job, or they're letting a bunch of illegal immigrants come into their country by boats and doing nothing to stop it, right? Safety to me is the most important thing, especially if you're trying to raise kids, especially if you're trying to raise a family. And a lot of people see rules as anti-freedom, but I think that rules give you the basis for freedom. Family values are very strong here in Poland. There seems to be a big correlation with strong family culture and overall happiness of the people, like a decrease in depression, but also just an increase in safety. Because when people are having families and men feel like they need to defend their wife and their kids, they're a lot more willing to stand up to BS. Don't get me wrong, there is a feminism movement here in Poland, like the whole strong, independent, I don't need no man. But that seems to be a minority. I think in America, this independence, strong woman that needs no man is a lot more encouraged. Here, families' opinions still matter a lot. This is something that I think goes away in more Western countries. But being an Asian, I believe that your parents should have a say, especially if they're involved in your life. Now, I think it can get too far, like in some Asian countries, like for example, my cousins in the Philippines, if they don't marry within the same race, they will get disowned by our family. And I think that's a little bit extreme. But I think the total opposite, where the family's opinion is not important at all, is also bad. In societies that go through hardship, specifically like war, or here they were under Soviet control up until like 1989, hard times create strong families. And there's still a healthy respect here for elders and for what they sacrificed to build the country to where it is at today. This pride of country and relation to homeland is something that I'm quite jealous of because I am an immigrant to America and my family, we moved all over the place. So I don't feel like I have any ties anywhere. The Polish people really value their independence and their land and their family. You know, it's really beautiful to see this like honor and duty to family. So let's talk about children for a bit. What's interesting is that Poland actually has the lowest birth rate in Europe, but it's weird because I feel like the culture still promotes family and wanting to have kids. And most women that I've met, even though they're like super strong and independent, they still want to have kids. So I wonder why the birth rate is so low here. I think it's more of a financial problem than a culture problem. And maybe you can say the same thing in the US. It feels like we're going away from family and more towards individualism. And that's not always bad. People should be able to think for themselves. It makes me sad that people don't want to have kids anymore and people kind of see it as a badge of honor. But to me, it seems like such an empty existence because my life has been traveling all over the world, been able to build this YouTube channel, work online, live in all these different places, and it's great. But at the end of the day, all these travels and all these experiences don't mean anything if you're at home by yourself. Maybe you have all this money, but if you don't have a wife or kids and nothing to come home to, it feels very, very meaningless. That's why I believe family and having kids is the backbone of society. And I think it's important to be in a culture that encourages people to have kids. The society here in Poland sets up kids for success. For example, if you are under 26, you don't have to pay into Social Security. You also have zero income tax. And if you are a student, you get half price on a lot of things in the country. Public transportation, at the tram, or if you're taking trains from one city to another. Poland is not for everybody. I can see how some people might find it a little too conservative, but to me, it's just the right amount of conservative. If you're somebody who values stability, order, family, duty to country, rule of law, I think Poland is an amazing place to live. I highly recommend Poland for Polish people living in other countries who want to come back. Also, if you are a conservative man or woman looking to raise a family, Poland is also probably the best European country for that. Poland is not a perfect country. They have their pros and cons just like anywhere else. And this is probably the closest thing that I've experienced to America outside of America. If you guys are thinking about moving to Poland, I highly recommend setting up a meeting with me here where we can break down how feasible it is for you, which city would be best for you to live in, how to find housing, how to legalize. We can solve all of that in a consultation here.